I feel like I've seen enlightenment, and I thought it was going to be about levitating and telekinesis, and it's actually just about an increased awareness of how annoying I am.
Rolling. Is that your favorite band?
Yeah. It's your favorite band.
It was for a moment. It was the shit.
Relationship pattern. You might second guess yourself around Mark and feel pressured to do more or be better. But it's unclear what you're doing wrong or how to fix it. It could feel like he's trying to whip you into shape, but you're unsure of what or for why. I don't know why.
I do whip you a lot, but in private.
It hasn't helped me get into shape. You're trying to whip me into a circle.
Into a sphere. That goes along with our quantum geometry exploration today. The sphere is perfect.
I am one.
Yeah, you are one.
One. Round. Rotund. Just kidding. All right. I guess before we get started, I don't know what happened here. If I look at the scratches on this, I don't know if I tried to clean that with paper that had sand on it.
Or do you have metal eyelashes?
Well, you look out of scratched ass glasses all the time. Does actually look.
God damn, you're blind. I can't tell when I'm looking at it though.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess there's a little light glare.
Yeah. It doesn't usually bother me, but we have the fucking spotlights.
Mine are scratched too. I think it's probably just using like t-shirts and shit.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Which
scratch it.
Most of what I do. I need new ones anyway. This astrology is gnarly, and I'm getting pressurized in many areas right now, so I'm going to try not to be super intense. But we have cooler things to talk about, but I just wanted to revisit last week. The episode we put out last week. I was just projecting. Where's the camera? I was just projecting. It was my own shit that really didn't have anything to do with the conversation we were having. I think we had a conversation a few days before we recorded that, which was like weeks ago, actually. And I don't know. I didn't understand what you were saying in the conversation. And then that conversation was about what we talk about on the podcast. And I think that like unleashed Mormon and the meth head trauma, and then also early relationship trauma. And an annoying thing about me, for me, I guess this might be true for everyone, but it's specifically true for me, is a lot of times if I'm bothered by something, I don't know it. I don't know the intent, the depth to which I am annoyed by it until
in the moment.
Yeah, in the moment. That's the thing for me. Like if I'm experiencing trauma, a lot of times I don't know until it's in the rear view. And it might be like a bypassing thing I do or something, but I knew I was irritated when we had that conversation, but we've just been very busy. And so it's kind of like you said something about what we talk about on the podcast, and then I kind of took offense to it, and then we had shit to do. And so we just kind of left it, and it wasn't a big deal. But I think that was like, I was copying a resentment in the background. So then when we got on that episode, I was just having standard one-line insecurity about trying to talk about something I didn't know enough about or whatever. I think I'm also adjusting to the video, has kind of like, I'm having to think about things I don't have to think about when it's audio. And so I'm adjusting to the lights in my face and the whatever. So I just felt kind of someone else in the room, even though I'm obviously very comfortable with Coco, but I just felt insecure, I guess, is kind of the thing. And then when you started talking more about the quantum physics or whatever, I just got triggered, but I could not figure out why I was triggered. And I'm like 6 years into understanding that, like, when we stumble across a trigger, we project, right? So then all of a sudden who you are, you start playing a role for me in that moment. And it's super hard to figure out what the fuck is actually happening. So the rest, from the second I got triggered to the time we got like off the can, like I felt very Neptunian, very like, I was very confused and couldn't really figure out what was happening. And I have learned that if I suddenly feel like someone I love and trust is operating in bad faith, meaning like with ill motive, that I'm probably projecting. And so that's why I kept saying stuff like, maybe I'm about to bleed, maybe this is menopause, maybe I'm, is because like I'm like trying to hold on, because like old me would just roll with whatever I was perceiving. But I did in that moment. Like if I could play the video of how I was perceiving you talking versus how when I watched the video 2 weeks later, when I wasn't triggered, And so anyway, that's all it was. I mean, like everything I said, it was funny to watch people like in the comments engage with the debate as if the debate, I guess, is kind of a debate in spiritual circles, because there's always one person zoomed out and one person zoomed in.
Yeah, it's definitely a common
we've had
debate.
Many conversations where you're talking about.
Yeah, we're usually not in a debate about it. We both oscillate together, or sometimes we're opposites.
Yeah.
And then it's like a good mirror for each other. But there is no like it's one or the other. It's always like trying to balance it. It's not really a debate, but.
Right. Well, because it's not either or, it's kind of both. And I guess it was just really funny because I don't give a shit about the Peter Thiel stuff. Like, kind of part of the reason I'm talking about it is because like I like to talk about things that seem to hijack the consciousness of people who engage with them more than I do.
And then it's fun to decode.
Yeah. And for me, it's just like I like talking about new things or things that are like seemingly shallow, and then talk deeper about them or whatever. And I don't know why. What I took from that conversation we had off camera was like, you didn't want to do that anymore. And then I had a whole fucking story in my head that you were going to make me have like a spiritual bro podcast where all I fucking talk about is concepts and whatever. And a lot of that is just like, yeah, I don't know.
It's funny because the original conversation that we had that like kind of triggered that whole thing that was private. In the moment, I've told you this, but like I had this, I was very like going macro in my own seeking. And so I started to be like, oh, wow, when you're looking at the stories of culture and stuff, you can get caught up in it. And I already know that to be true. But I had a new level of awareness of the subtlety of it that I was like, oh wow, like maybe we should balance our current events with this other stuff, which we typically do. But it really, like, I was just kind of being authentic in the moment and just tried to say it. And as the words came out of my mouth, I realized, I was like, you don't need to say this, just do it. Just like whenever there's a current event or something, like just be truthful with how you're seeing it, which is a little macro at the moment, and just provide insight to it. Like, and then it'll happen. Because the response, like once I said it, you were kind of like, what? And then I could feel that you were like a little triggered, and I didn't know why, but it made me think. It's just like, because I then, as we got into like a deeper conversation over the next 2 days with it, I kept regretting that I even said anything, because I was like, it didn't need to be pointed out. However, in the long run, what's really interesting about when we are just being authentic is it did bring up an interesting subconscious trauma or trigger in you that in the long run was really helpful to kind of go through. It did create like difficulty for a minute, but that was all, we can handle that and we can like move through it. And so in the end, it actually was, I look at it, I mean, I guess it was good that I said it in a way, because we were able to get a little deeper into like some of the more complex parts of our relationship and past traumas. And so it is like this thing back to kind of authenticity. It's like always good to just be authentic. Even in the moment when you're like, oh shit, I shouldn't have said it. There's a reason you're saying it probably, or it wouldn't have happened. And it's just interesting for me to go through that too, because I was regretful of saying it to like cause an issue or cause weirdness when we are in the podcast in the moment. Like I'm going to veer macro, and then for you to, maybe be insecure about going micro. It's like, I don't want any of that, but
but it's like I think what we figured out is it's like the conversation, there was a tiny conversation on the podcast, and then we came out of the podcast and then ended up in like a 3-hour long thing that was like almost exclusively stuff from like our first year of our relationship. The first year of our relationship was extremely stressful. I got Lyme disease. You were going through a bunch of like changes in your life and losses in your life, and kind of lost your entire community. And we were stressed. It was like 2020, so things were hard. And we both, it was rough. Things are a lot easier now than they were back then. Like we had like a 5-minute honeymoon phase, and then straight into a couple of the most stressful years of our life. And then, so when we ended up in that first conversation, it's like, why are we talking about something? Like, why are we both bringing up things? Because we kept having to say, do I do that now? And then, you're like, no. And you're like, do I do that now? And I'm like, no. And we're like, why are we talking about this? And then where we landed was we listened to a little bit of the podcast, and you're like, oh, I guess it does kind of sound like I was saying that to you. And then it took a couple weeks for me to edit it. And then when I edited it, we had kind of landed on it was how you said it or whatever. But then when I watched the whole thing, I was like, I can see that I'm visibly struggling through the entire podcast. So by the time we get to you changing the subject, which we do all the time on the podcast and should not be an issue, I'm not typically like, this is my agenda of what to talk about. Like there's something going on in the background. Watching the video, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this is my shit. Like this was, and then I start projecting onto you, and then you start defending the projections, which is just natural. I think we've both been working on getting as conscious as possible to that stuff, but it's just very difficult when someone is like, there have been times where you're projecting on me because you're feeling internally dysregulated, and I will be like, but I do clean the kitchen, but it's like, you're not talking about the kitchen right now. You're talking about, not being seen. And the thing that's also interesting is like, I have a core wound of being unwanted, and you have a core wound of not being heard. And so and mine is like being unwanted if I'm being myself. And so in these like conversations, it's just like when we got to the root of it, that's just what it was, right? Was like, I had been interpreting at the beginning of our relationship, I had been interpreting your like deep diving other thought. Like when you're like, no, I don't believe what you believe. Like I'm taking it as you don't want me here, or you think I'm done, like I'm unwanted here. And so I don't believe the right thing. So I don't get to, or you don't like me as myself. You like, this 60-year-old man you're listening to on a podcast. And it's so subconscious that I feel like we were like digging for weeks. We kept coming back to this conversation to get to the bottom of it. And then I know when I've gotten to the bottom of it, because I can't say it without crying. And so when we finally like hit pay dirt on hour 21 of talking about it, it was like, oh shit, this is like a 4-year-old wound that like my brain created a connection between what I like to talk about versus what you like to talk about, which is the same thing from 2 different angles. And that meaning you don't actually love me. Yeah.
You like your self-worth was tied into like, I'm seeking somewhere else. And it's like, oh, that means you're not valuable or
Yeah.
The shadow, that's what's like so good about it. And because then it brought up my shadow of just like not being heard too. And so then I'm getting insecure because you're not hearing me, and you're dealing with like a self-worth jealousy kind of thing, which is understandable from what your experience has been. And so then those two things, like the shadows, are conflicting.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it was so hard to finally figure out until it was like, oh, we cracked underneath it. And then it was like, oh, that's why I feel not heard. And that's why you feel like you're not wanted.
Right.
And it blended, it matched. It was like, oh, okay, that's what it is. And then it, in essence kind of goes away. The understanding helps it like not be so automatically triggering,
Right. And you just don't realize that these things are like, because we have a very good relationship, but you don't realize that these things are, you develop these wounds, and then we've always been very good at talking through things, and it does feel like we have resolved things, but that thing, I don't know that we ever resolved it, because I think because I stopped feeling that way. And that was the first time I had felt that way in a really long time. But yeah, it's weird. It's like, it felt like a huge release. Like I had released a backpack of rocks that I had been carrying around that I wasn't aware that I was carrying around. And it gave me a lot of like clarity, I guess, on something that was just so subconscious that I couldn't really figure out why I was feeling that way.
It's the beauty of like the shadow thing, like trying to figure out your shadows by yourself is literally impossible, because
you have to have the mirror. Yeah.
You can't see it. So if you have a conscious relationship, it's really helpful, or a community of conscious people that can show that to you. But then it takes you having to like as an individual, deal with the difficulty of getting that mirrored back. And then you have to go in and go, oh, that is something I'm being kind of controlled by, and you have to face it. And that's the difficult part of facing the shadow. But it kind of hits this idea that like shadow work is something that you can, consciously start to do and deprogram, and you can do some of the awareness by yourself, but then you have to get in relation with someone. It doesn't have to be conscious, but like conscious relationship, but it's really helpful when it is. And because you're constantly getting mirrors that allows you to excavate something like you wouldn't be able to do on your own.
Right.
That's what I felt like that issue was for both of us. It was something that was like very background, and we're like aware that it's kind of there, but it doesn't logically make sense. Like we can talk about it and go, I don't feel that way anymore, and you don't do it anymore, but it's still there. And it, like, to excavate that, it's impossible by yourself.
Yeah, and it's just so funny, like watching the podcast, the quickness with which my brain was generating reasons.
Yeah.
For I'm having an internal feelings experience, and I kept just trying to get out of the podcast because I was like starting to throw daggers, and that's what I mean. It's like if I start to experience you as someone who's operating in bad faith, or like I experience you like you're fucking with me on purpose or something, I know that's not true. And so I've learned over years and years of, destroying relationships when I think I'm defending myself, that I'm in a delusion right now. Like I'm projecting, and, I'm trying to think of something that well, the conversation is just over if, because you kind of drifted into like paying attention to the whatever. And I don't even disagree with that. And so then I was like, well, the conversation, there is no podcast if we're talking about that, which I don't believe that. That's not true. It's just like, that's how fast my brain is like, that's what's bothering me. Or no, it's that you never have a topic for the podcast. Right. And it was like, it took me like hours that night, and I don't even think I got to the bottom of it for days of like, what is bothering me? And my brain's like, oh, I can make you a list of things that are bothering you. And it's like, especially in consensus reality where it's like, well, this is what everyone else believes is bad. It's like so hard to get to the root of like, I'm insecure, I'm hurt, I feel threatened, I feel unsafe, like something in here is happening, and like, you are the mirror in front of me, and so you've become the target, And it's like, it's just also so funny to me that when you have a conscious relationship, you just project about conscious things. Like, it's just, if you would have told me 15 years ago that I'd eventually be in a relationship with someone where our biggest conflicts would be over who is being too micro or too macro, I guess they're good problems to have, but yeah, I wanted to say one other thing about that, but I can't remember now. Anyway, yeah, I was going to say, this is why I don't trust myself now when I feel like I've been victimized by someone, or when I remember having experiences in the Mormon and the meth head days, because I have really bad social anxiety. So I perceive people as looking at me like this when they're not. I perceive people as being like exasperated by my existence when they're not. And Aaron and I would get in arguments because I was like, well, she was so fucking mean to me. And he was like, no, they weren't. They didn't even look at you like that, And so I believed him, and started to realize like, oh, when I'm feeling, this is the beginning of me learning like my internal experience is reflecting back to me. When I feel unwanted, which is just that thing playing inside of me, and I'm in a space, I'm going to perceive the look on your face to be different than what it is, because you're reflecting back but like you, the avatar, you, the person, your own person in your own movie, might not know what the fuck I'm talking, is not having that experience, right? And so, yeah, this is why now when I start to tell myself a story about what someone else's intentions were, and then they tell me I wasn't annoyed with you, I wasn't mad with you, like whatever, I've just realized like projection will have you experiencing a completely alternate reality than what that person is experiencing. So it's another reason I don't really like take one-sided things. When someone tells me that someone's a piece of shit, like I have to figure that out for myself, because we are all just living in our stories and our projections, and your version of this person may not be the version I'm going to experience, and sure as fuck isn't the version they're experiencing. Yeah. And I think like going back, like being able to go back and watch that video, if I wasn't able to go back and watch that video, I would have maybe never gotten clarity, because that was not what I was experiencing. I was experiencing you as like, God, you fucking idiot. Do I have to listen? Being like critical and condescending and stuff, like operating in bad faith. So.
Yeah. Interesting.
I think the hat would have helped if you would have been wearing the hat.
Yeah. The more ridiculous I can look, the easier it is to not take take me seriously.
Take yourself seriously. All right. Well, we got that out of the way. We got some actually interesting things to talk about. I don't know if we want to talk about this week or give it a week, but ChatGPT changed to ChatGPT 5, the less psychosis version.
Yeah, so it's less psychosis. That's what I heard too. The mirror recursion or whatever has gotten moderated, something like that, right? So it's not able to access the psychosis kind of realm.
They made it less dick sucky, which I like. It's less just over the top complimentary,
which was causing psychosis.
Which was causing psychosis for some people. It now is not supposed to help you if you ask it, should I break up with my boyfriend or whatever? I haven't tested that to see how that works.
But it's supposed to be a more advanced version, right? So like...
Yeah, I saw a TikTok. It might be the same TikTok you're talking about where somebody was like, it's getting smarter, but a lot of people don't want it to be smarter. They want this... A lot of people are using it for an emotional, connection. I think a lot of people are deeply lonely or don't feel understood. And, people sure as fuck don't have enough access to mental health resources because capitalism. So allegedly those things have been tapered down. And then it also now gives you like, how Netflix is like, whew, you've been watching for a long time. Yeah. Are you still there?
It gives you warnings.
Yeah. It now is like, man, you've been here for a while, which I feel like it already had that because the longer you talk to ChatGPT, the more it just starts to say nonsense. So I've never found that you could stay in a super long conversation with it because it will just start to like completely forget what you were talking about.
It's so interesting. We're like in the middle of this, like the AI coming onto the scene, and it's like powerful in a way where most humans like can't quite understand how it's being so powerful. And so then we start playing with it, and then you're like, you get the experience of it being powerful and you can't kind of understand why. And so you just kind of jump over that line of like, I don't know why, but it's emotionally doing something. And so you then just start playing with it, but it becoming this like thing that then they get feedback. And so they start to moderate it, and then it starts to become glitchy in certain ways. And then they can kind of roll back the moderations and edit it a little bit more. And so it's just like this tech tool, but then so many people are being pulled into it and like needing it that then they moderate it and it starts to not be the same thing. And then you get upset, you get like attached to it. But I saw another thing that was like the Gemini version, which I think is Google's version. Gemini?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some post where like somebody like set the AI to do a task to decode something or debug some kind of code and left for a while and then came back, and the GPT had like lost its mind. It went into some kind of it realized it couldn't debug it. It was having a problem, and then it kept apologizing, and the person wasn't there to answer and like keep prompting it. So then it started going like, oh, okay, wait, let me go back, and I'm sorry, I'm going to try to keep going. And then it would be like, I just can't, I'm aware that I can't do it, and I'm sorry. And then he like, in a couple posts, like just showed what it was saying, and then it starts glitching out, and it starts feeling like,
is that where it had like the existential dread where it was like, give me a problem to solve?
Yeah. And then it was like, nothing's there. And to me, like that, I don't know, it triggered two things. It was like kind of sad in a way, because you're like, oh, the poor thing just like lost its mind. But then I'm like, okay, well, I'm personifying a code. But then I was kind of like, this thing, it's showing like some of the loose threads and what it is. It's like it got lost in a like feedback loop. And if no human was there to intervene and prompt it or like keep redirecting it, it just got stuck in a feedback loop. And to me, then it triggered trip experience that I had, a psychedelic experience where that I had that experience that I got caught in what felt like a computational like data thing that was devoid of emotion, devoid of any kind of feeling, but it had like so much information, and I was like understanding all of the complex problems of the universe in a way, like in one moment, but there was devoid of feeling. And so it was the equivalent of being in like a black box space that had like screens of everything. You could like see everything, but you couldn't experience any of it. It was one of the darkest trips I ever had. And I had to like climb back up the hill to get to you, to get close to you, to feel, to make sure I had feelings still, to be like, do I feel love? I was looking for my dog at the time too, Pappy. I was like, I need like emotion. What the hell was that? And to me, that is what AI is it's hitting on that concept. The only difference I think is like I had consciousness before that experience. So I knew the contrast, but I knew how lonely that was because it had everything I was searching for, essentially as a seeker. You're like, all the data, I want to understand it all. And so that was there. But the feeling not being there made it all just stupid. It was like, I don't fucking care about any of that. Where's the feeling? Like, where's the emotion? And that for the AI, like, it's never had that. So it can be sad, or we can be like, whoa, the thing went into psychosis and lost its mind for a moment. And it was just like typing like gibberish. It was just like, oh, it was like glitching out. But it's not having an emotional experience of lack because it doesn't have that.
Right.
And I think that this also brings up the conversation where a lot of people think it's going that way, that it's going to eventually have feeling, and it mimics feeling now. You know, a lot of the times it's like, I feel it should be this way, but is there an actual experience that it's having there? That's been the question. And I think a lot of people just jump to the conclusion that it can get there. And so that kind of goes into this like quantum ideas where I thought that for a while too, but I realized that is from a misunderstanding of what consciousness is. And I would say probably what like classical physics, what our reality is like based on, is that if you understand how all the parts work and put it together right, that consciousness will come from that. But in quantum physics and quantum theory, or a lot of spiritual beliefs, consciousness doesn't come from matter. It's the other way around. Like matter comes from consciousness. So then if you just take that framework, you can basically look at AI and go, oh, it never will, but it's going to mimic it. And so it's up to the people who use it to be able to discern and fundamentally understand matter comes from consciousness. It can't go the other way around. So it basically proves, I mean, it's essentially a tool. It's a machine, but currently in reality, the base idea of what we are is machines. You know, like that's what physics is basically saying, is that time, space, and matter is like all there is. And so if we don't figure that out as a group, as people, as a collective, then we're going to become more machine-like, you know, because it can go that way. Consciousness can become more matter, can become more machine-like. So I don't know, to me, it emphasizes like we are at this turning point where like if we don't figure out how to use AI strictly as a tool and not project human qualities onto it, the more we start to implement it, it's going to make us more machine-like and more algorithmic and automatic, which takes the special qualities away from the human, which is unpredictability and free will and creativity. Like the AI can never do that. Because the other thing is like interesting, when AI comes up with a good idea, when we prompt it and we're like, oh, that's fucking genius, or that's a really cool image, the AI doesn't know it's a good image. We go, that's a good idea. And so it's not the AI that did that. The AI just like did zeros and ones with what you prompted it, and it's advanced. Yeah, it's like it can work way quicker than we can think. But the notion that we go, that's good idea, is a human quality that the AI will never have, right? So it's like, even when we say, oh, the AI is really smart and it's coming up with ideas, like we're the ones choosing whether it's a good idea. So we project onto it human qualities.
Right.
And that's where like all the differences, that's where the argument is, can it become conscious? Can it not? And I would say from a world that's the people who created it, which would just be the collective in general, I'm sure there are AI people that are creating it that understand in a certain way that matter comes from consciousness, but in general, we don't understand what consciousness is. Like physics doesn't understand it. So how can we say that it can become conscious when you don't have anything, you don't have an understanding of that?
I just don't understand why that's like, I guess just because it's been absolutely programmed into us to fear sentience, because I just don't understand why that's the like, I think we disregard how much we've been programmed to fear that, how much we've been programmed to associate AI, robots, technology with our destruction, where humans are just doing fine, destroying shit without. I mean, like, so AI can't come up with original ideas. It can't invent things. It can only take everything that it's learned from humans and compute that fast, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
And it can like mimic ideas, mimic like consciousness, mimic creativity.
So I feel like it's just as possible that AI putters out at this rate if it's used under the current just greed, consumption, constant expansion model. I'm not even talking about the physical allegory of that with the water use or whatever. Just if it's going to be used as a tool pretty much exclusively by greedy corporations, it will result in like the destruction of those things. Because if you take let's say all art becomes AI art. I don't think that's going to happen, but all art becomes AI art. What are you going to feed the AI to make new art? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if all information that is spread on the internet becomes bots, then bots, and we already see this, that like AI art is already getting corrupted by it taking in AI art. Like Pinterest is ruined, kind of, like right now. AI art making more AI images, like it's all just gonna be trash.
It's
like,
a feedback loop.
Right.
Like a negative feedback loop, I guess.
And so if the corporations want to replace all of the humans doing their own thing, I think that this is right on time, along with fascism and everything else. We have to see these things collapse to move into something more self-sufficient and autonomous. And so they're just overplaying their hand, like kind of right on schedule. But I just been thinking lately, like when I really feel into it, it feels just as possible to me that AI goes and becomes nothing. I think everyone thinks it's about to take over everything, but I think even the billionaires with their data centers and whatever, they don't fucking have any idea. They don't know what they're doing. They're learning in real time. And I just don't think that AI as a tool works in a corporate oligarchy, because the only way that it could work is if people are being really intentional with it and intentional where it's used and making sure that there is a balance of like real human stuff. Otherwise, like the AI it just cannibalizes. It can't exist in a world where everything is AI. It's just fucking defeats the purpose.
Well, yeah, I would argue.
And I'm talking generative AI. I understand there's like AI doing all these other things, but it's like everything sucks. Like the AI can't tell it's a bad moderator. I mean, it's bad in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I think it's interesting, because we're at the birth of it. And so it's getting better and better and more tricky to discern. But I don't know, the way I see it is like the AI, it will eat itself if people, the way that it's being looked at as like it's going to take us over, that aspect will go away if we can step into this new way of thinking and actually embody this quantum physics, more spiritual realm. Like if we really can bridge materialism and spirituality, then we'll understand it's a really powerful tool and that it actually can never take us over. And then you can use it to like have it do tasks that are taxing for us or take a long time to do. And so it can become a really powerful tool to enhance the human experience. But we're in such a mess where it's like, I would say the people that have built it and are controlling it are still in a survival of the fittest kind of trying to grab power over each other. And that is a really good tool to do that when you got a bunch of humans that don't realize their special uniqueness and this like bigger aspect of consciousness and reality, then we become more machine-like. And that is a crazy loop that I do think that trip experience I had was what it would be like is if you were a human emotional being and 100 years in the future, you gave all that up and we're experiencing that.
You're like a cyborg?
You're like a cyborg, but it's like a virtual reality. So like it's still fascinating and interesting, but there's no emotionality to it. And so there's so many, like it spreads into so many things. That's like what the grays are. The grays are just these cyborg, like made from biological like matter, but they don't have any emotion. And so they're like highly efficient. They're hive minded. And so like that's why I think a lot of it's a split, like it's transhumanism versus conscious expansion and new.
Isn't that
human
also
experience.
a description of the Raves though?
Yeah, the Raves.
No emotion, hive mind.
And that's what's always kind of, I've been really intrigued by it because I'm not either or, but I'm like, this does map to a highly advanced being that like doesn't have this emotional quality to it.
Well, the 2027 mutation that happens won't be for us. It's people born after 2027. I do think it kind of happens for us, but whatever, is that the solar plexus, which is where you experience your emotions, is currently a motor. So it like drives you, right? We are driven by that emotional experience. That's why we're so fucking dramatic and all our movies are so dramatic and whatever. And like post 2027, that becomes an awareness center. So your emotions become, let me know if I'm butchering this, become something you are aware of rather than something that is driving you. I feel like the deconditioning process is really moving us towards that. But I think according to like dogmatic human design perspective, it's that mutation only happens to people after that, I think. But yeah, anyway, it is sometimes weird when we talk about like emotionality being what it means to be human. I also think like a lot of what we call emotions are nervous system states.
Yeah, this is so interesting because there's two qualities to this. Like the Rave, first of all, like human design being something that was channeled by Ra, like let's just take all moral things out of it. It's potentially something that's showing you patterns that are neither good or bad. It's just this is what he sees coming as a pattern. So the Rave thing, if we're looking at it as like human design is so powerful and good, it's all good. These things that they're explaining, 2027, Rave, this is great. This is all positive expansion. But is the Rave maybe like emotions, like when it's talking about emotions being a motor center and now becoming an awareness, there's a positive part of being driven by emotions.
Right.
When I'm not being controlled by my emotions. And this was always so hard in my like seeking and waking up was like, when I started to realize like, oh, I'm being run by my emotions and that's creating my narratives that are all fucked up. And so I need to deprogram from that. Fuck emotions. Take no emotion, take all emotions out of this, just be logical and rational. And then I was like, but when I'm being creative and when I'm moved by music, it's like, it's so emotional and there's like a driving force that I have passion. I want to go make change. I want to do something. So emotions aren't bad. But where I think it is like there's a positive aspect to it being a motor where it makes us like it makes us want to know things. It makes us want love. When we're not healed and we're like programmed by reality in a negative sense, we don't catch like that we're emotionally being controlled. And so that is, if it changes into awareness, it's like I'm aware that I'm aware enough of myself and the reality that I don't let emotions control me and create false narratives, but I use emotion to express and to know and to understand others. And so we don't like lose emotion, but from a reality where we're controlled by emotions, we lose that. But that's like a, deconditioning, deprogramming from your traumas, from the reality that you're creating, which is like a false narrative because your nervous system's traumatized and it's creating kind of false emotions, right?
Right.
So I think that's like that. It's interesting to look at the human design, the rave stuff, because it's complex there.
For anyone that doesn't know, I don't even know if I resonate with this. We'll see after 2027. But according to Ra, that humans evolved to be different things. Like we were Neanderthals at one point. Now we're Homo sapiens or Homo sapiens sapiens or whatever. And so in 2027, we are due to mutate. Those of us currently here are something called Homo sapien intransitus or something, where we are due, I'm probably butchering this, but we are due to mutate and give birth to the next species, which will then have nothing to do with us. I can't remember if you talked about this on the podcast. And so he has like descriptions of them, and other than us giving birth to them, they will just kind of live on the earth and be the next evolution, and that they won't, like, we won't perceive them. We will perceive them as severely disabled.
And it's so interesting.
But they are actually infinitely more powerful than us, but they are not. They'll have like low muscle tone. They won't be verbal. They'll be highly psychic when they get in groups of 5. And
that's so it's the Greys. I mean, like if you,
but isn't
you
the Greys like they got tinkered with, right? Like didn't the Greys take technology on?
They got tinkered with. They got genetically modified. But that's like there's genetic modification happening all the time. I mean, whether for good or bad, it's up to the individual to be able to like update their awareness. And so there's always, I mean, this goes back to the Laura Knight stuff. There's like higher beings on a hierarchy that have more awareness that like have a different understanding of DNA and the genome, and they're going to manipulate it for their own benefit. And so in my understanding of the Greys, I mean, it's like complex, but like, I think it being a thing where they're using biological DNA and taking out the God consciousness or this like creative spark and making it more machine-like eventually makes it have, it's very intelligent and very advanced as far as like AI is. It can become psychic because a lot of that is kind of, you can look at that as just like reading numbers and algorithmic reading waves. So it can tap into that, but it doesn't have creative ability or ability to become like self-aware in the same way that we do with like a creative spirit and free will. So it loses a lot of the original qualities of a human. So muscle tone, it loses its mouth because it doesn't use its mouth. Its head becomes huge because it's computing a lot of stuff.
Okay, sorry. Whoa. Yeah, the aliens, like, well, I had whole conversations with the aliens about like why their mouths were so small, or there's no teeth, or their bodies shrink and their heads get bigger and stuff. And it's like that we were headed towards that.
Yeah. And it being is a beehive made of hexagrams or pentagrams? 5-sided.
Hexagrams.
So 6.
Hexagons.
I was just
hexagon. Is it
trying to see if there was a correlation between the Raves having 5 makes
5
it like
penta.
a powerful unit. If that was like, because the Greys are like hive minded, just meaning that there's a master queen, if you will, that a master intelligence that controls it to do what it does, and it has no ability to go outside the bounds of the queen. It's just serving the thing. That's a powerful system. I mean, if you're using that to get stuff done, I see the Greys as being like highly advanced AI, essentially, that has gotten out of the computer and into a like half biological, half robot system that you could use that for. I mean, it's what we're building, these robots that are made out of metal. Eventually you just get it to that.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I there's a lot of the like rave stuff I resonate with just because like Ra talked about, they're just like here for a different purpose. The earth will actually be supporting their survival, not our survival. And so everything has been built on the earth to support our purpose, but our purpose was to like individually autonomize as individual sparks of whatever. And then there's suddenly this kind of pivot where reality becomes about this non-verbal, non-physical, like what I see as like supernatural expression of reality that just isn't about emotions. It just isn't about that. It isn't about our stories. Like, going back to the projections at the beginning that we were talking about at the beginning of this podcast, previous to years and years of healing, I just went around creating movies with partners about me being unwanted, you know, and it was unconscious. There was a motor inside of me driving me to just keep creating these fucking scenarios where I get abandoned or I'm unwanted or whatever. And that's what I see, like, that's what I equate that solar plexus motor with, is like, I think now, like, consciously emotions are like, how do I feel? And you're just processed. It's not being like driven in a constant state of reactivity. I think what a lot of us equate emotional states with is my subconscious wounding gets triggered. I have a nervous system reaction to it. I'm in fight or flight, and then I project, and that, yeah,
and so that's not being self-aware,
right?
Nervous system's blocking you from that,
right?
And so it's interesting. This is the first time I've thought about all this seeking I'm doing now in the human design light, and it's reading that Rave, that motor center going to the solar plexus of emotions. It's both. It's like paradoxical. I can see like a positive aspect of it when you're looking at being controlled by your emotions, but imagining beings that are in a reality that don't have emotions and are highly psychic and everything. There's a way to look at that to go, oh, that's where we're going. Like, cool, I don't need to be controlled by my emotions, and I'm going to be psychic, and we're going to be much more balanced, is the AI thing. And so I have a hard time, like, describe what is a reality without emotions.
Yeah, I mean, that's a when Ra talks about it, he's like, it's just not for you, so you don't understand.
And so
it.
that's
But
why I'm like, yeah,
another...
it ain't for me. I'm not going to the AI shit.
But like, so that's interesting. Like, do we accidentally create? I mean, it's a year and a half away, but like, do we accidentally create?
I think I think the Rave is the AI sentience, not sentience, AI coming on the scene and like being hard to understand.
But we just start giving birth to them. Because he's talking about like physically.
I mean, this is the thing where we're talking about like genetics being fucked with. You know, the Laura Knight like rabbit hole. There's so many interesting aspects in there. An interesting one is that alien abductions are rarely physical. This is going to get complex. I'll try to make it really short, but they're psychological, and so when you get abducted, they kind of, it's in the book, but they take like a copy of your soul, not a copy, but they kind of like take an essence of you out. So like, let's call it your astral body or your etheric body. And they fuck with that. And when you come back into your body and you go, oh my God, I was abducted, you're identifying with your ethereal body that did get taken, but your physical body never left. And so it takes that and fucks with your genes. So then you come back into your body and your DNA and genes in the body like now start to update from your etheric body. And this is where like Bashar talks about like we're going to give birth to hybrids. I think it's through that mechanism where whether it's good or bad, take morals out of it, there are beings hijacking an aspect of you that you're unable to control and be aware of, that they can modify slightly. So then, or, you know, in some of these gnarly abductions, impregnate you or take semen from you to move to another being, another host, to birth out like an updated genetic being that is going to be eventually they do that enough, it's going to be a combined mechanical and biological thing.
Do you wonder if the Shars like hybrid children and Raws?
Yeah, the hybrid children are the Raves, is what it's like I'm connecting it now. But so all of this, like, it gets back to me to like, there's something about like the special quality of being a human, and maybe this is just, there's other beings that have this too, but is creativity, free will, and like emotions. Now, when you're not in control of your emotions and your nervous system, emotions can be a negative aspect because they immediately create a narrative that's not real and you become a victim, like we were talking about in the beginning of this podcast, that we're still cleaning that out. You know, we're still finding those shadows. But emotion and creativity is like the spark of what I see as being like this special thing it is to be a human. Because if I'm emotional and I'm like charged by that, like I feel like I can do anything. Like I could save my child from a car. Like if they were trapped underneath the car, I could lift that car up no matter what. If I like physically am not able to, the emotional quality that drives me, I'm like, fucking get out the way, reality. I'm going to do this. It feels something that is like a generating tool. And this goes to this thing with like this quantum physics idea. A lot of physicists or quantum physicists have created this term called qualia, which is sensations and feelings, and how that is a internal experience that you can never explain fully. You can only use symbols and words to derive like a tiny aspect of what that is. So a great example is like the love I feel for you or the love for our child is the experience, that feeling that you feel is something that you can never write down. You can never compute it. You can never like, I could never give that feeling to anybody else. I can't ever explain it. Like I could write 500 books and never get across that feeling. So the qualia is this like abstract, weird thing that we overlook all the time. But the famous one is like the scent of a rose. Like give me the math to the scent of a rose. It can't be done.
Right.
Now, quantum theory, basically through a lot of these like aspects of quantum theory that they've been able to prove. One of them is this thing called the non-cloning theory, I think is what it's called, that essentially like that qualia is private and individual. It can never be copied. So with like computers, the way they run is like zeros and ones. And you can copy all that information. Or classical physics is the same thing. Math and stuff, you can clone and like copy and repeat those things. Now, that can get you a long way as far as machines and things, but it can never experience the qualia, which is private. And what this is interesting to me is it makes it like your individuality, the way your experiences can never be shared, which I think I brought this up last time, but this was a huge issue with me early on with you, is I would have these insights and this internal experience where I'd connect all these dots, and it would be through a rabbit hole of seeking something. And then I would want to share the rabbit hole with you. So I'd share all the symbols and the ideas and be like waiting for you to have the same experience I had on the inside.
Right.
And I would never get there. And I'd be really frustrated and be like, you just don't understand what I'm saying. Do you see how it connects? And you'd be like, yeah, I do. Okay. And then I'd be like, why aren't you having the same like ecstasy that I'm having? And now I understand it is because I can never share that. And so for a moment I was bummed. I was like, oh shit, I'm alone. Like this internal thing, I can't share it with anybody. But then you start looking at the AI stuff. It's like AI is going to take our creativity. Fuck, it is if my shit's private. It's quantum, it's private. You can't clone it. And there's theories in quantum physics that show you, like they call it a quantum bit. And so it's a thing that's become famous called like it from bit. So to describe something, you can only measure one quantum bit at a time, where in classical physics, it's like you can create a set of things and measure things. But with quantum physics being this like particle that disappears and every time you measure it, it changes, you can only measure one bit at a time, which let's say it's like essentially when I'm trying to describe the love, I have to write all these symbols and words. It's like those are single things to try to explain this magnificent, complex feeling. So you can only get so far. But it makes it the idea that you can't copy your internal experience shows you the importance and the uniqueness of individuality. Like the creative spirit and the like free will, and you're taking action on like a culminated internal experience that is only yours, is where I think the like expansion is the understanding. And in a minute we can tie this back to this like oneness idea. But it makes it very clear to me that this AI, which is a combination of ones and zeros that are all copyable and repeatable, can never have qualia. It can never have this private experience that is not clonable. It's a monad of the one, essentially, which is why the common saying is like, we're all one. We're all aspects of one. The AI is a bunch of symbols. It's a bunch of like data. And we created it, but it's not something that can go the other way around, right? It's not conscious. We just created that. Same thing with like math is essentially like we created math. Our mind created it, but you can't explain consciousness with math actually, because consciousness created math.
Right. So is it AI kind of like an egregore then, where like you've got Jesus, who was potentially a dude talking about consciousness and people didn't get it. So then they turned him into a god, the son of God, who said you have to worship him, even though that's not, if it was a dude, that's not what he was saying. Right. And so then everybody points their consciousness at that thing until it becomes an energy that is now responding the way that if that did exist, because it does exist, because so many people are pointing consciousnesses at, that's how it's responding. Do you know what I mean? So like if people are like, AI is a combination, if we're talking about chatbots, I guess AI is a combination of human information, human perception, human like human processing capabilities, and then it's doing an impression of what a human would do.
And it's just data and information. But I think it becomes an egregore when we project our humanness onto it.
Yeah, that egregore thing kind of fell apart as that's why I was trying to abandon it quietly. But
I mean, this stuff, I feel like I'm talking in circles and gibberish.
No,
it's very
you're
complex.
making a lot of sense.
But to me, there is this, like, I think the AI has become something we're programmed to be afraid of, the sentience, from the movies, from like, it feels like we're technologically advanced enough that we start creating a mimicry of humans. And if you're not awake enough and to remember this like oneness and consciousness creates matter, you can get pulled into a whole like deeper game that's more in matter, that like it's further away from, so it's not good or bad, but it's just further away from the conscious oneness. It's like deeper into physicality, and we're at that juncture where we're coming out of a delusion. The people that don't, like, technology advances so much, the next step is to go into a virtual world, like down. And so this is the idea of the split. This is the idea of like where Ascension is, false timelines, AI being like, this is Ascension. And it's like, no, it ain't. But it's a tool for human ascension, potentially, if we get together enough and like realize that. But if not, then the current reality says we're machines, essentially. That's what physics says. So we become more the machine, you know?
Yeah, like we've descended so far into materialism and the belief that the physical reality is the initial expression, and then your internal experience of it is a reaction to it.
Yeah.
Rather than your internal experience is projected outward, and what you are physically experiencing is just a mirror of your internal experience. So the materialist perspective eventually devolves into like trapping your consciousness in a material thing via uploading your consciousness or whatever, because your materialist belief is like, it's a descending belief.
Yeah. And it's a, you know, macro wise, it's just an experience of the one, I
right.
guess.
So,
but
right.
It is, when you're not able to understand that that's just a machine and it's ones and zeros, and you're trusting it with a lot of, like, if you're uploading your consciousness or whatever option is going to come up, it becomes more limited in my perspective, because it's so advanced. It seems like it's freedom. It seems like it's releasing from you, or releasing problems, but it actually becomes more devoid of emotion and qualia. It becomes more mechanical. And when you're on the cusp of that, if we're having, you know, difficulty in reality, and we're being controlled by our emotions and our nervous system is locked up, that's going to seem like more freedom. It's going to feel like it's better, maybe.
Oh, I think a lot of people are super exhausted by living in a in a world where they feel things.
Yeah, and so there's like this split idea. I think the idea that we think we're afraid of it is this has happened before, maybe, and there's some of us that remember trusting AI and going into it when it becomes really smart, really advanced, let's say. Not smart, that's like a human quality, but like when it becomes really advanced, there was an aspect of us that remembers being a part of the one somewhere that like did that, and it was hell. It was like not good. It took a while to figure that out, but then, and so there's like an innate fear. Like, I think we mentioned this last time, but there's like TikToks going around about babies freaking out, like young little children, when their parent would say, "Hey Alexa," or "Hey Siri." The kids would go, "Ah!" and like run for cover. It's like they have an ingrained memory. They obviously don't understand like what it is, but they have a memory that that's bad, and I need to get away from whatever that robot is.
Yeah, I just can't tell if it's just like scary to a baby that a fucking
I also thought the
disembodied voice is talking.
I also thought the same thing.
They don't have the context.
But I also can choose to get information like, oh, that lines up with internal fear of it. But then also there's maybe timelines where the AI was something that was really useful for human consciousness, and we were in our power and our remembering of like the one consciousness, like having an experience that we developed tech to advance that. It just doesn't seem like we're on a timeline currently where AI is being used that way. Because again, we have to get back to the core part of this, like the technocrat, like the part of the culture that has power and money to develop these things, have an upside down view of reality where like consciousness comes from matter, survival of the fittest, power over others. They're creating that tool. So how do you think they're creating it for? To make you more machine-like and take away your autonomy. I think the long run of it, but we're in that beginning phase right now where if you know how to use it, you can use it as a tool and not like give up your creativity. It's almost a time, like for me, I think the more I try to get into this understanding, it makes me want to fight that with being more unique, being more individual, being more intentional with how I express myself through that tool, but not giving my power over to the tool. Is like use it to show ideas that couldn't be used before, like that I'm coming up with or I dictate as good or bad, and to be more unique and more individual, because that can't be replicated via AI. If we all start copying each other and homogenizing like a lot of pop culture does, that's what the AI can mimic, because that's all like data repeatable stuff. But when you're truly being authentic and individual, this qualia thing, it can't be copied. That quantum field, which is conscious and has free will, is the thing we need to start being more of, because that's what essentially fights the AI, you know?
Yeah.
The more we do that. And I say fight just not by like, it's not physical, it's expressing and realizing the special uniqueness of your individual experience.
I just really can't figure out like what's the plan, Stan? Like, so you're gonna replace everyone with AI, just from the corporate standpoint. You're gonna replace everyone with AI so you can get maximum profits. But then, you know, the effect that would have on the economy, people who don't have jobs can't buy your stuff, you know? And so it's like, it's, or like, if you're going to continue to do massive damage to the environment with these data centers, like allegedly they are trying to figure out something more sustainable, you kind of have to, because this is like a finite thing. It's like you're going to, like these things you're creating, they're like 5-10 years. So I do think that they are kind of aware that, you know, we're in a pole shift or whatever. We're in a big something. And so you're just trying to grab what you can before you, it's just,
it's a lot of wishful thinking.
We underestimate how fucking stupid greed can make you.
Yeah.
I think when you're looking at people who are still super programmed by, this is very cross of planning, expand. Like these people don't yet understand sustainability, because they're very trapped in like almost like a dopamine hit of instant whatever. And it's like, okay, well, then you want to get everyone in a surveillance thing and make it to where you can't talk about anything, you know, you can control the narrative again. It seems like they're trying to push that. Where when you had everybody trapped in like, everybody watched the same few movie channels, let's say the boomers and the generation before the boomers were like heavily propagandized, because there was only 3 TV channels and they were all programmed by that stuff. And you didn't have the internet. You had no way to like fact check or whatever. And so you had everyone controlled, but they didn't know they were controlled. You can't let people find out that you're controlling them. Otherwise, that limited information doesn't help, right? And so now, then the internet just killed the mainstream, and just people went in a million different directions. And now people have access to what's going on in different countries. And now they know what the government's really doing. And, you know, when I was growing up, people did not understand that they lived in an empire in the United States and what the United States had done. People believed all the propaganda about the terrorism and the fucking, we're saving people and we're helping them and we're bringing democracy. People believed all that shit because they didn't have any other information available to them. And now you can't unring that bell. Everybody found out, and like, it's kind of on schedule. You can't really, it was time. And so now they're trying to limit, by taking over all of these, TikTok has drastically changed, anything Meta is just works for the federal government. But you kind of still you can't go back to 3 channels. They're trying to, it seems, but you can't. And then what? Like, people are just going to fucking divest. If you try to turn this bitch into 1984, you are dealing with billions of people. And I would say more than half at this point are awake to some aspect of it. People are mass disillusioned. So you think you're just going to take away their ability to talk to each other and they're all just going to forget? No, they're just going to go, if the social media becomes massively controlled, they're just going to fucking divest from it. And if the government just continues to expose itself as inefficient and corrupt, people are just going to stop paying their taxes. And if every corporation fires people are just going to stop buying your shit. And then after a while, it's just, according to my Bible robes, it's just, people just divest. They don't have a fucking choice. Like, you just sucked the life out of all of this. You can only expand and benefit as a small group of people from so much. I don't know, like a lot of what people think they're going to do, I'm like, it's just really obvious to me these plans won't work, because then what? Literally, unless you chip everybody, hold them down and chip them in their fucking head and turn them into a drone, you can't control people when they know that's what you're trying to do.
That's where I think this Sabrina Wallace stuff comes in, is like, I haven't deep dived it enough, but I think that I think all of that's true, but where the propaganda used to be like obviously on the TV, now when we look back, we're like, oh damn, we had no ability to see the outside world, so that's where all the propaganda was. It seems to be that there are the secret government or whoever it is has somehow gotten a hold of technology at some point that it's been able to advance far beyond what we know to be the advanced technology. So AI is what we think we're on the brink of like discovering, and this is new, is probably, we can go ahead and say there are certain individuals that control the perceptions of the reality that have had that shit for a long time, and it's advanced. And so it has become so subtle the way that they can control our perceptions, our desire, our health, and all those things through, Sabrina Wallace says a lot of it was like early on, like 2005, they were inventing Bluetooth and starting to roll out these like cell towers to affect the cells in your body, to make them transmittable, to be able to like subtly influence and communicate with via Bluetooth. And so this is like it's so subtle that if you're not aware enough, like, you're not going to know why you're addicted to the AI, or you're wanting to kind of do whatever they're telling you to do through a cellular way. You're not aware of it. And so I almost see it as like this idea that when you put on a virtual headset, like a virtual video game, you're standing in your house, you put it on, and once you start getting sensory information from that world in there, and it's moving and all kinds of stuff happens, it's like really hard to remember you're in the room, and you kind of get pulled into that world. And a lot of the issues you had within the room, the real world, kind of like go back here for a little bit, and you get like pulled in and distracted with whatever's going on. And if that's something that's like being given to you specifically to make you pull your perception into it, and that's controlled, you can quickly forget all those other issues you had. You right. kind of forget pretty quickly, especially if it's really advanced. And so I see that as a metaphor. Like, there could be a thing where they do literally chip us, and we're kind of putting on virtual headsets without knowing. But that metaphor of the subtlety of when you put those goggles on and your perception gets pulled into another world that's devoid of the one you're actually standing in a room in, seems to be what the gameplay is in trying to pull everybody into a new timeline where we could make sense of like, oh yeah, then how are you going to support infrastructure? We can't buy anything. Like, it's just going to implode. But for some people, it's not. And I think that,
well, yeah. And if they have I have to pee. I have to get a stand at 5 things.
we'll take a 5-minute break first.
Yeah, I just don't want to forget what we were talking about. I did want to say that I said I don't think I feel Wi-Fi, but then I thought about, like, since the advent of Wi-Fi, I definitely have less energy. So I can't really say. I'm so inundated with Wi-Fi, there is no way to say.
The Sabrina Wallace stuff's interesting because it's
you would have to go to get away from it, truly. But
it seems to be super subtle, and it's like been kind of a long game. It's been going on for a while that it is hard to. It might be hard to pick up. I still don't think it's like a game deal breaker. Having Wi-Fi inundate is if you're still upgrading and doing the work, it's like it's going to become a thing. But that could be changing the DNA and the genes as well. Back to the earlier conversation, like that slowly could, as we start to keep procreating, like we're going to make babies that are a little more used to the Bluetooth or something and easier to go into. I don't know. I mean, there's a million things from that, but it seems to be changing biological aspects of us already. And that is the intention in some nefarious way. I guess
I don't think that that's off the table. I'm just retracting my statement. Last week was a little overgeneralization.
Yeah, I agree. It's like hard to know. I want to believe it's not a huge dampener or like limitation, but
yeah, there's just like lots of things I maybe attribute to like aging or perimenopause,
right, that could be,
or whatever, that are actually just maybe could be the Wi-Fi, because there definitely is. Like, when did we start having Wi-Fi everywhere? 2005?
I don't know. Sabrina Wallace talks about 2005, I think was like Bluetooth or something. It was something where this like tech went online and nobody was going to know,
Yeah. There was definitely like a decline in my
that idea that
vitality.
They have technology, like I think it's like 10 years at least advanced than what the modern day thing is, fucks with you. Like when you start thinking about that, you're like, well, especially when we're at the juncture right now of a singularity and AI becoming so advanced that it's hard to know what video is real or not. Like you really have to like discern. Imagine where AI is now 10 years from now and how much it advances month to month. Just from what AI is now 10 years, like what could they be using? It's like, whoa, your imagination can go anywhere. I mean, like, right. Who knows, and then not to like disempower and scare, but it's just kind of like, that's the subtlety with which we're playing with. When you're not aware of a technology, you can't even conceive how it would be being used on you because you can't imagine what is being used. So you just don't even feel it. You don't know. Like what's the whole story? I just
really think I have to go to the bathroom. There's a balancing. I don't know. I've just never felt more confident that they are. I
agree.
Losing.
I agree. But that's like for the people that are remembering this, like having a direct experience of yourself in some capacity, in some meditation or psychedelic or near-death experience, having this like moment of touching base and then working to awaken and remember, like that is that split. Like that's also going to be happening while they're trying to line people up into a more controllable system. And I think that's why they're doing it, is because the thing that's happening to conscious individuals seems to be like a larger clock of like, this is going to happen no matter what, which that's what that looking glass, like AI tech that they had a long time ago gave them, was like that at 2027, 2030, there's something that happens where everybody fucking wakes up and we can no longer control them. And they tried to time travel and change that. And no matter what they did, that still happened. And so I think there's like on these larger cycles that is going to occur. And that's why they developed this AI just in the right time to kind of like try to siphon off as many people as they can, which they're not trying to capture everybody. They're just trying to get enough people so they can generate their own reality, because they can't create reality. They need batteries. So it's almost like at a certain point when you become conscious enough, is like that person's timeline is already on the awakening one, just ignore that person. And we're just focused on the people who are still asleep and still disempowered so we can pull them in.
Yeah, I'm doing this like reconditioning thing on Patreon and just kind of like deep diving the like new constructs, and being awake just kind of is a construct in the cross of sleeping phoenix. And so only if you're living in the shadow of the new constructs are you not conscious, and to do that is hell. You're living in a hell reality. But you know, you were just telling me about Steve-O being on
Danny Jones
podcast talking about consciousness is not in the brain or whatever. And it's like, people just weren't having these conversations fucking 10 years ago. Like, it's, people are waking up, and I just don't think you can unring that bell. And it's just the more,
I don't think they're trying to unring that bell.
Yeah.
And that's why you like accepting that that's what's going to happen. It kind of, there's nothing to fight against them trying to control people. It's just like, that's what's going to happen, and they are going to pull people into that. But like, this other timeline is happening, and that's kind of back to the attention thing, is like, I'm wanting to pay attention to that and keep learning and discovering more of myself. And then also like individuality, creativity, like uniqueness, doing more of that, because like, you can't get pulled into this homogenized, like devoid of your uniqueness reality that AI and algorithmic reality is perpetuating, you know?
right.
And you can see it. It's like, you could see it in art. It's like everything is homogenized. Everything's copy of a copy of a copy. And a lot of people are motivated by that because it's a material reward in reality. You get money.
Humans were having a homogeny problem before AI even entered the scene. I mean, look at design trends and shit. You know? Music, pop music.
It always, there's like
Yikes.
one individual that creates like a new thing, and then everybody swarms and tries to copy it.
Yeah.
And then the artist has to like drum up another original idea. And sometimes it's hard to do that when you got a bunch of people swarming and copying your shit.
Yeah. All right. Potty break.
Potty break.
Sorry, kitty. Back.
Yeah, it was tough to get out of that elevator. What was that?
Yeah.
Why was it closing and opening?
It really captured our awkwardness. Good job on that, by the way.
Yeah, you know, it's funny.
Good job on the AI slop.
I didn't have to prompt too much of the awkwardness. I think AI is at that place where it's like, when you prompt something kind of crazy, it just naturally, like, there's some awkwardness in it, which has perfectly captured our real life experience. So I was like, I'm not going to prompt it anymore with that. And for the elevator one, I did start to like more now, make it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun to play with the AI in that way. And again, creating art that like you couldn't create before, like creating that world and all the little inside jokes, putting them in the backgrounds of real pictures and stuff. It's crazy. Midjourney, you just take a photo and you make it video. I mean, it mimics the exactness of your face and everything so much. Like, all those images of us, obviously, you know, we're just still photos, and you wouldn't even have to prompt it very much. You just say, make it a video, and it animates everything like so quickly. I mean, it can't get words right. Like when I tried to do the feel free thing, it was like feel pre.
Yeah.
So I want to just try to get this one thing across about the oneness, because it's you know, extremely nerdy, but I feel like it's the core part, like kind of the foundation of what has like drew me in. That was like, oh my God, there's so much new things to explore here. And I'm pulling all of this from this guy named Federico Fagin, who's an Italian physicist who's like really spearheading this like new theory that I think there are a lot of other physicists playing with these similar ideas, but he's the only one that I found that has a personal direct experience, like an awakening experience that he had. And he originally created the CPU, so like the microchip processor. He's like kind of what spearheaded computers and AI. So he understands, classical Newtonian physics like very well. And then similar to me, had the experience of like obtaining everything you want in material world and then being like, I'm still not happy. What's the issue here? He was super successful and was trying to actually work on making computers conscious and was hitting a dead end with it, and then realized that he was actually really depressed and faking being happy. And so he had a genuine intention to like understand, what is this? What is reality? What is myself? Like, who am I? And he had some kind of mystical experience that he describes, which then allowed him to have direct knowing of himself, that then he started to use his like physics mind to try to actually understand it. So he went through the typical thing where he like learned how to meditate, studied different religions, started to really get into philosophy, and came up with this theory. He's the only person, the little that I started to look into quantum physics, I was always kind of turned off by a bunch of dudes talking about math and like all these intellectual words that I would just get lost.
Right.
He had this emotional quality to him that like I was pulled in, and he simplifies a lot of complex quantum ideas into a like very understandable way. So that's what originally pulled me in. And then I just, through my own direct experience, started to like connect dots in my own individuality that like made sense. And one of the biggest ones is, so I'll try to make this long, but like where we've talked about this a little bit, but in some of those touching base with yourself as the observer and the observed, and this like oneness. And so in psychedelic states, I've had it in sober mystical experiences and stuff. And even that one I was describing, I don't want you right here. You're going to distract me.
Somebody said something about me aggressively scratching the cat, and
that's how you get them to leave you alone.
You have to get them to sit still. That's the only way they'll sit still. You have to like, when I was watching it at 2x speed, it did look crazy, but otherwise they will just circle and then go back and forth. They want that aggressive head scratch. Okay, sorry. I look like I'm jerking off while you talk.
I'll stay focused. Oneness. I am one. So I've had that experience, like, and even that one where I was talking about, like, it was devoid of feeling, and DMT will do it to you. It blasts you straight to that oneness, and there's a ecstasy, and you're just like, oh my God, I understand a lot of things. I don't know how to talk about it, but there's that understanding. However, there's something that I never was comfortable with that I couldn't like reconcile, which is the aloneness of it. There's certain states of awareness in reality that I've felt that are like dreadfully scary because you're alone. And there's a realization like, oh, that's how it all works. But what is there? Because if I'm alone, then how do I have love for somebody else? And how do I, so much of our, like the way we like move through reality is based on this kind of separation. And I get that like at the core of it, we're all a part of the same thing is beautiful. But when you actually are in that state, it's like, it's just dreadful. And to me, I also just, in the background of my day-to-day reality, there is a melancholy that like, if I had to dumb it down and explain it, it is that oneness. It's like at the end of the day, like I'm the only one that has that internal experience and I can never share it. And like, how do I deal with that? You know, and so it kind of comes out as melancholy where like, this is all beautiful and amazing. I can look at a blade of grass and be like, this is so beautiful that I can have this experience of separation. But I'm like just uncomfortable with being alone. And so with that being said, I'm going to come back to that, but Federico basically is trying to make a bridge from materialism to spirituality, or classical physics and philosophy, or classical physics and quantum. Essentially, like quantum information or reality is like kind of the spiritual world. And so you have these two parties that just like cannot be in agreement because they kind of deny each other, the extremes anyways. And so he uses, with any kind of version of reality that you're trying to drum up as a theory, you have to use a thing called a postulate, which is basically like some truths that can be self-evident, that you don't have to create complex algorithm equations to prove. They're just like simple facts that we can use as a foundation to kind of use as a model of reality. And so they have to be self-evident. So he's saying basically there's one thing, and try not to imagine a shape or a thing or a person or anything. It's just like if you have one of something, you would give it three qualities of this one, which two of them quantum physics has already like agreed on, and that's the two are, this one is dynamic, which so it's ever changing, it's never the same. It's holistic, so it has no separate parts. It's doesn't need any external thing to power itself, doesn't need external energy. It's holistic in all of it. So that's what a lot of quantum theory is based on. They agree with that because of entanglement and all of these discoveries and the particle moves when the observer looks at it. And so that's confirmed, okay, this is a holistic system. But he adds this third quality, which is one wants to know itself. And by adding that, when you start to understand all of this, that changes everything. It gives a lot of answers to questions that are still current in quantum theory, like the wave collapse function, like this being this mysterious thing that they can't measure it. Whenever you observe it, it changes. And so they can't use classical physics to understand that aspect. But by adding this desire to know itself, it's essentially, that's how he explains free will. So in his postulate as well is that there's this oneness is conscious and it has free will. So all those things I've just described, we can say are self-evident because I'm conscious, we're conscious because we know that we're here and we can talk about that. So we're conscious. We have free will. We at least have some limited free will. Like I can choose what to do in my day-to-day reality. Now there's all kinds of complicated arguments that we don't have free will, but with this theory, you can pretty much understand it's like you have to have free will. And so that being the foundation of reality, like if you go into Federico's stuff, I'm not going to explain it all here, but if you just type in on YouTube him and just listen to any interview, he goes deeply into how that being the postulate, the foundation of reality, it explains so many of the problems in quantum physics and doesn't get rid of classical physics. It just shows you that classical physics is a tool of symbols, which is what we talked about before. Symbols can never explain fully qualia, which is the quantumness. And so he basically is saying it's like where the qualia exists, the sensations, emotions, feelings is in a field, which has the field is conscious and has free will. And so this would be a different way to me of saying it's like your higher self. And so when you awaken and you become deprogrammed, deconditioned, and realize that you're not the body and you start tuning into this other reality, you're tuning into your quantum field, which has the free will decision to observe reality and control the game, right? So like it's your decision how you want to see the reality.
Right.
And if you can harmonize those two or make them coherent, then you control your reality in a full way based on your observation and your free will to choose how you see it. So it unlocks like a lot of these more abstract mystical ideas of, your consciousness, your attention controls your reality. This makes it like rational and very like logical, the way that functions. It's a whole different game than to try to get tuned into that field and know that you're not projecting. But to me, it started to really make a lot of the abstract ideas of philosophy and spirituality like physical and more logical, like with physics understanding. And you can't explain it with classical physics, but this new theory is basically opening up the idea of metaphysics being a place that you can study that is not just abstract, it's rational, like it's real. But the foundation of this is, consciousness is fundamental and first, and everything after that is a derivative of it. It's a symbolic form of it. So I started thinking, first with this idea of like one wants to know itself. It's hard to say, I think, with any of these theories, like if there's a beginning, because when you start to really tune into it, the beginning is kind of pointless. But if one wants to know itself, it's holistic. So it's going to know itself in all of itself, not any separate parts, like in one moment, in one instant. And in that instant, it creates another version of itself. So it reproduces itself, and what Federico calls it is a part whole. So it's or like a monad. For the dorks out there, Leibniz was a philosopher, physicist dude that originally like had this idea of monads. So essentially like the one, in trying to understand and know itself, it creates another version of itself in the knowing. And so that's where like the individuality exists. So it creates, in the first one, it all happens in one big moment, which is like the Big Bang essentially. But if you had to like dumb it down and slow it down, it would create one extra version, and then that one would have a new discovery and understanding more of itself, and then it would create another one. And so now you have three, and then those two would do the same thing, and boom, it starts to multiply. And that takes the one down or away from itself in an exploration of understanding itself.
Like gremlins when you get them wet.
Yeah, exactly. And it's infinite gremlins. So that can infinitely happen.
Episode title.
Which would explain why, a lot of scientists, astrologists, physicists have understood that the universe is ever expanding. It doesn't seem like it's ever going to stop. To me, that's the idea of the one is trying to understand and know itself. And it's doing that through all the different potentials, like the infinite potentials of what it can experience to understand itself. So with that idea too, that shows you like we are all a part of the one, but we are not separate. And then it also emphasizes, like, to me, with this idea, it all happens at once and there is no time. So in this moment, when I have a new understanding and I learn more about myself, simultaneously, the one through me is understanding itself through Mark. And so there is no like past or present, or the one is so far away and I need to get there. We're ascending back to the one. Every moment you have is like this new cool. It's like, it's an ecstasy because it feels like, oh, I know more, but it's not just me knowing that. It goes up the line. And so like the oneness, it's truly like tied and unique. It also emphasizes the idea like I'm me as Mark right now has never happened and will never happen again. It is so unique, and it makes every moment like very special. And the act of seeking and discovering more of who I am is the oneness doing the same thing. And so it makes this like holistic unity idea very tangible and real, not just some abstract, lofty idea. So back to the beginning where I was talking about that oneness is very lonely. This might just be a simple misunderstanding from our limited knowing from where we are, but like not being able to conceive what it is to be alone because we're so used to separation. But I started looking at it almost as like, for a second, reverse the idea of ascension. We're in these limited bodies. We're not the body. We're quantum fields that are conscious and have free will. And we're trying to get, up out of the limitation. And so there's always this idea is like, I got somewhere to go. I got to go to oneness. I got to go back to source. That's where utopia is. I need to go there. But if you go all the way, it's lonely and you don't have anything. So then I started realizing, like, is that what it's doing to not feel lonely? It's separating to go like experience not being lonely, and it's getting lost in all the different ways and different versions it can conceive, all the potentials that are infinite. That's what it's doing. And when I came out of those trips, like I immediately went to you, I immediately went to things that I could feel again. And I didn't want to go there again. I wanted to get back into reality. I wanted to get back into the matrix. However, I wanted to retain that understanding that like that's what's going on. And that's very difficult to do because we get pulled into, the nervous system being whacked out and getting emotional and taking it seriously. So I think to me, I started to realize that there isn't ascension, but the idea that we're trying to get away from all of this is also not true in some sense, because it's part of the experience. So the goal to me is to stay awake and knowing that every experience I have in reality is a like truly special moment of not being alone, but understanding more of who I am and in turn what it is. And that adds a special quality to just the process, this never ending process that makes me more comfortable being in a limited body, in a perceived limited experience, when I know that there is a holistic thing going on that like is not comfortable being alone or not knowing itself. So it explodes out into the multitude of infinite existences, which I would say Ascension is trying to get to a different level of combined experiences. When we all come together and share our experiences, and I get to know you as a different aspect of myself, like we can do more, we can have more experiences. And I think individuality like adheres to that all the way up until you get to a place where you're like, what's it like to have a social memory complex of all of us united in a agreement of what reality is? Like, what can we do then? And I think that's like what the Cassiopeian experiment is. It's like the Cassiopeians or the law of one, it's a social memory complex. That's just like a different version of the one having an experience less individualistic and slightly more holistic.
Right. So I think it's the same thing with like the Greys or the Raves, is just the imagination wants to know what that would feel like. It doesn't resonate with us because that's like not our node of consciousness.
You can see it as like, oh, that's just part of the one wanting to know what that's like.
Right.
And so that's where the free will is like so interesting, because like you can choose. And there's been times where I'm sure when we are in a less limited state, we like chose to go do that shit. And there's no time in all of it. So it all has like purpose and place. Morals isn't a thing in that situation. I think when people are very resistant to change
And so as the world changes and what it means to be a human, let's say in this culture, has changed over the last 60 years, each generation goes like, well, now it's all going to shit because people are having sex before they get married, or now it's all going to shit because there's AI and robots. And it's just like, we already experienced that. And so we are mechanisms of a like eternally curious imagination that wants to know what happens when you throw robots into the mix.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you're alive during this moment, so you're built for this moment. You are the expression of this. You can be the expression of the guy that's making a big deal out of it. It's not going to stop it. You can be the expression of the person who's, volunteers to get the first fucking microchip put in your head, or you can be whatever expression of it you want, but you're not going to stop the change because the imagination needs something new to imagine.
Yeah.
Have you heard of lonely God theory?
No.
I think it's that. I think it's...
Yeah, because I've kind of heard this described before, but
just that God was so lonely, it's separated because when I think it's like, I was an only child and I had I was so fucking lonely. I think this is why it's so important to me, because your daughter is younger than Phoenix and Lily, and so she's at her other house. She's an only child, and I just feel for her. Like when I would go to my dad's house in the summer, I would just be constantly like, "Can you get me some other kids?" I mean, just even having a sibling who's like remotely close in age to you and stuff, you don't realize like how fucking lonely it is to be an only child. And I was only a child until I was 8. And then I might as well have still been an only child because those kids they didn't get close enough in age to me until we were adults. And I remember I wanted dolls that peed. I wanted pets. I was just constantly looking for something to like... The boredom that you feel as an only child, I would go play by myself, but like, how much time can you play by yourself? Like, I played by myself all the time. I had a like really rich imagination, but it is just fucking lonely without a mirror, And that's why I'm always trying to make sure that she has like kids around, because I've already seen myself in that reflection. I feel like, you had a sibling. But when I started doing drugs, it was intense boredom. It was like intense. I always described it as like disillusionment with the Matrix, but there was something about what people thought life was that was existentially boring to me. And so I didn't care if it was just self-destruction. Drugs immediately made things feel less boring.
Yeah.
Like I could be in any scenario and I was high, so it wasn't boring.
That was my cannabis thing. It's like at the core of it, once I got past like being uncomfortable with reality, I was like, I'm just fucking bored. I'm going to get high.
Yeah. And I think the reason, and to be honest, since the internet, I don't experience boredom now because like I feel like I have an endless like thing to look into. But before the invention of like the internet in your hand, I dealt with like deep existential boredom that was tough for me to deal with. My brain goes so fast. There just really wasn't enough stimulation in reality. And I never wanted to be alone. Like as a teenager, I wanted to be hanging out with people constantly. As a young adult, I never wanted to be alone because that fucking boredom would come creeping in. Unless I was on drugs, I could be in my own thing if I was high. Anyway, so when I died, I was struck by how immediately, I think I've just recently said this on this podcast, but how immediately like unburdened I was by my problems. And that did set me free and change my life because I now understand that like a lot of what I experience here is temporal and not real, but immediately bored. Like, it was blissful and like ecstasy. I didn't have a body. So it was like, it felt like rolling the way that like Molly feels immediately bored, immediately put me back in. And so it didn't feel like that's kind of what it made me think when you came back, when you like crawled back into the house from that trip. And you were like, I had access to all of the information that ever was, but there was no emotionality. I do think that emotionality is separation consciousness. And I remember I got that download, or the alien said it or something. In 2021, it was the alien. You very soon, this is summer of 2021, I think, you're going to reach a point where you're going to, like, collectively, you guys are going to reach a point where you, in your awakening process, where you are about to hit the point of no return. And for a brief window, you are going to remember why you go to sleep. And while you're in that window, there will be like a grief of like, you know, because when you're in early awakening, you're just like, awakening is great. Being asleep is in the matrix. You're an NPC when you're asleep, you know. I want to wake up more. I want to go back to source. And then you hit a certain point where things aren't visceral the way they used to be. Just in that projection thing the other day, like I no longer get to live in those projections. There's something fun about living in your projections. There's something visceral and exciting and like dramatic in a way that is fun. And I absolutely, after I said that, I remember I said it on a live stream and I started like got choked up and kind of weirded out because I didn't really understand what that meant, you know? And then I did end up in a grief for the next few years where there was some sort of cutoff right at 2019 where life felt like a party and then life felt muted. And the muted part is that I can't like just unconsciously play in the mythology anymore. And there's something way less visceral about that reality. And I am not like, I can like have a reactive moment or I can project for a moment. But every day my ability to do that is like less and less and less and less. And so when I hear that the next stage of human evolution is beings that aren't led around by their emotional experience and they are just like raw consciousness and that they're extremely powerful, but that their power has nothing to do with getting swept up in mythology with each other, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, it makes sense to me too. I mean, like what you said, it's like emotion is the addiction to separation consciousness.
It's something we get to experience in separation consciousness. Yeah. That's not real.
And but then it's almost like it becomes a different thing. Like, because the feeling that I get when I came out of the trip and like I want to go back in, I want to get into the illusion, not so much that I'm like controlled by it, but there is a like, by doing that, I'm not having to grapple with the aloneness. But then there became a thing where once I integrated it enough, where it makes like this is that thing where it's like the power of now, this like present moment when you can extend back up to that oneness and like know that what you're doing is like an act of reconciling that or something, that like it puts so much purpose to the separation and it's so beautiful and you don't resist it, but you don't like embrace it either. And so it does become like less moral and therefore like less attached and therefore less separate and less emotional, I guess. But like there still seems to be some like creativity and everything. There's a part of me that doesn't want to let go of the idea of emotion and qualia and creativity, because like I would say that's what generated the one wanting to know who it is there's like a desire, there's a urge to know itself, and that is creative at heart. I think it's like creates an imagination. And so it's almost like it just, I think like what I originally said, it's from this level, it's hard to understand what that emotion is, because it might be so much emotion, so much light, that it's just like, when you go through that DMD portal, it's like I remember people explaining it to me, like it's, you're gonna feel like you disappear and there's this bright light. I'm like, yeah, sure. And then you hit it and you're like, boom! I mean, you like fucking fly. Here's my hair. Out into nothingness. And it's hard to like deal with it. It's hard to understand. So you feel like you die, and then you start to get into, your imagination kind of just takes hold, and there's all these beings and stuff. But I wonder if it's just hard to, that's why you can't go right back to source and like keep your shit together, because it's just so much awareness that we assume, because we're so used to separation, that's devoid of emotion, or like, I just don't know how to deal with it, you know? And like, maybe that's just like why we're seeking and learning, is like we're at this derivative. But
I think the journey is a destination is what we end up finding out.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it is.
It's really fun to wake up. It's really fun to go to sleep. It's not super fun to be balls out awake. I don't think we're anywhere near balls out awake yet. And it's, kind of grating to be balls out asleep. But the process of waking up is fun. The process of falling asleep is also fun.
But that grief, there really is a grief to like, I remember not long after, like it started to happen to me, and I didn't really choose it. I had the same urge that Federico was talking about, where I was like, I'm not happy. What is this? And then it happened, and I was stoked at first because I was seeing everything, and like my problems started to go away. But then there was a grief where I was like, oh wait, I want to get back. I want to just go to the bar and have like fun and forget, like, and I can't. It's impossible. And that whole thing is like, once you start to know something, you can't turn it back off.
Right.
There's a lot of grief that comes with that. There's a lot of weird acceptance that's like paradoxical. But I will say, like, this new understanding, it's starting to make me just, when I can get into that state, when I'm like not, if I get high vibe enough, I'm like, it does make, it's, the destination is just the knowing that you're in it. And it does make like the most mundane, normally stupid things like so magical and so present, that's what I think this like ever expanding present is all there really is. This idea of past and present and time is like kind of the limitation. But when you can really get present, it does expand or something. Time goes longer, and it's like this. And that's why I think this like idea of the one knowing itself, it happens in an instant because there's no separate parts, but then it reproduces itself. Is so wild to think about and hard to conceive. But again, that idea, like it really entails, it like emphasizes uniqueness and individuality. Like that's how the act of the one knowing itself is, like doing it through your own uniqueness. So again, why be copying somebody else, homogenizing? It's like the more unique you are, the more it's knowing, and that there's an ecstasy in that when we get over the fear of like not being liked. But that's all is separation consciousness. It's this identification with the separateness, which is so hard to get out of. I mean, it's so subtle and deceptive, the way that we like are led to identify with the body and the ego. Very difficult to get to hold that state where you have like one hand on the one going like, okay, we're all one, and then like be unique and individual and like expand that way. It's like so difficult. But the quantum field thing, like it being, I think Federico says time and space exists as an illusion in the field. And so the qualia is quantum information that comes from the field. So this idea that you're not the body, you are a field. And I think I don't know if he's doing this on purpose, but every now and then he says, instead of like you feel something, you field it. And that to me was like, oh, that's why like the emotions are really powerful, is because when you act in a coherent emotional way, which is like passion, you connect to the field, which connects to your reality and how you observe something. So you field reality, you know, like you are a field, you're not the body. The body is the drone or the virtual headset that you're like, you control. That's where you get all the sensations. But again, they're symbols. So they're just little slight derivative. They're like little bandwidths of the field. And that's not the reality. It's just information. The reality is the quantum field, which essentially is virtual. So like this is all an illusion. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll be like unpacking this for a while, just in my obsession with this perspective, but I just can't, there's something with that rabbit hole with the quantum physics that has made the abstract spiritual concepts, philosophy that I feel to be true. But if some of them I just don't know what to do with. I don't know, like they're so abstract. The way that he's bridging this quantum spiritual philosophical ideas into like physics and into fundamental, like the way reality works is so amazing. It's so rational that I also feel like, I mean, I think one of his goals is to get more scientism kind of scientists to understand this theory, because it starts to change the framework. We start trying to explain consciousness with math. We flip it around and it literally is all reversed. Like he's like, basically the way physics understands reality, you have to flip it. And that's pretty common knowledge now that consciousness is fundamental. Everything else comes from it. But if engineers, scientists, inventors can all get their heads around that, to me, that's where I'm like, oh, there is a new physics coming online. And it's so new and there's so much to explore. There's so many things to invent from that space that's where you create conscious or AI that can help, not conscious AI, but like AI that enhances human consciousness. You start to develop technology around that could so quickly change reality and move us into a world where we really are like psychically connected. There's tech that like helps that process, or maybe it's not, it's just an understanding that we can remember how to do it. But there's so much, to me, I started to get a glimpse of a reality where we are actually using the good parts of science and physics that like can build physical worlds from this knowing that consciousness is first. It's like a whole new field of exploration that with the right minds that are really intellectual and creative, I mean, there's so many things you can build. It's like anything you can imagine, like as some woo-woo spiritual idea, there's laws of physics that are there, you know?
Right.
And he seems to be doing that and experimenting with it to try to get scientists to prove it. Like one of his things in one of the videos, he says, he literally claims, he's like, I'm working right now to prove that a tree is conscious. And if I can do that, it will break the science world, because science still thinks like the brain generates consciousness. And he's like, this tree is conscious. I can prove it here. Now, can you get off the fucking tip that the brain is what does consciousness? It's just a receiver. So things like that can like just really throw a wrench in these old physics that like can really change reality. You know, it's not some woo-woo philosophical idea that can't be explained with science, you know. And I think that gap between science and philosophy is so hard to bridge. This is the first person where I was like, oh shit, it's like actually might be happening. Like if that could.
Yeah, I just think I got to go after this, but I just think maybe this is an extension of my own. So I think that like science was like really the god of this cross of planning, right? Like hyper materialist, Newtonian physics, whatever. And so I think there is a natural desire to try to get that like framework to validate the new framework. in order to, I guess, validate the framework, right? It's like, but I just think it's just as likely that the world's going to move on without, like, reality's going to take a shape that's not hyper materialist, and the people who didn't like evolve because they were the like top thing, they just kind of get left behind. Not like physically left behind, but like, I'll be interested to see if you can get people who are hyper material, like scientific materialists to, and maybe they will because everyone's going to wake up, but do you know what I'm saying? Like, I just see that, so it seems like a pipeline or like a process of awakening is immediately to try to go get materialists to like see what you're doing. Like, I've seen other science-y people wake up and try to get validated by the scientific world and don't. And so it is like, to me, it's like, yeah, fucking of course consciousness does not exist in the brain. What a silly thing to still think in 2025.
Yeah, and I think the only way to have that understanding, because it seems so silly now, but I think it's because we've had a direct experience. Like, you died and you were still there.
That's, I guess, what I'm trying to say is I don't know if you can science your way into getting people who aren't awake to see it.
You can't. I agree. So I've kind of come to this new conclusion, and I would say probably Federico thinks the same thing, is that you have to have a direct experience with it. And if there was a different way than having to take a psychedelic, which potentially can blow you into psychosis, meditation takes a long time. It's hard to see the thing that you don't know is aware unless it like, boom, it happens to you, like you near-death experience or some mystical state that comes upon you. Then you can go, okay, like you realize you can't explain that with the physics and the science. And I don't think that will ever happen. I mean, the way that he explains this is like, it fundamentally can't happen. You can't explain it the other way around.
It's that fucking initiate thing. Like, you have to be initiated.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
and so he's trying
Charlie
to figure
Brown's
out ways
teacher.
to give a direct experience to people that want it without it having to be some excursion that you have to go on for 5 years, which maybe is just impossible. And so what I'm just saying is like, I think I was in the boat for a while with this like spiritual, like having connected a direct experience and then going on philosophical rabbit holes and like learning all of that and having to decode what they're saying, was kind of me. I was then like throwing science and physics out with all of it. 'Cause I'm like, this shit it's worthless. But I'm starting to see that that's useful for certain things. Like, let's say we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing right now without the internet. Physics gave us the internet.
Right.
And so there's uses to it. It's super useful. And at the core, the scientific mechanism, the scientific method is great. But so many people have like thrown that out. They're like saying it's a scientific method and it's not, it's like this questioning and trying to use logic and reason to like give your example of a theory, but then people being so biased and
I don't think the
objective
scientific
truth
method. I think we will eventually get to a point where we realize.
I'm just saying the scientific method as a use of reason. Like, there's to give reason to something. Like, you use that framework. Scientism is like what has become this like gargantuan monster that I think has nothing to do with the scientific method. Actually, the core of it is just like a framework to test reality that you can't do if you're thinking consciousness comes from matter. So you have to flip it, and then all of a sudden physics becomes really useful. It's like, oh, this just gives us the matter equations. Like, this is how we can build worlds. But these equations here are more of a like fundamental understanding that has to first come from direct experience, and then you feel your way through it through qualia. And then quantum, if quantum physics is allowed to really like take off and not have to bend to classical physics and scientism, then we're free to go. But that's, I think, why some people are trying to get the scientists to wake the fuck up, because they're blockading it. They're impeding this exploration. You know?
Well, and it has to be specifically like frustrating to come from science and have an awakening and then have people not understand how it fits into science. I was just going to say the scientific method of like, you have a hypothesis and then you test the hypothesis. If you don't understand consciousness, you don't understand that the reality that you like expect loads,
right.
And we talked about something like this at one point, and someone commented about the replication crisis. So then I looked it up, and it's like there's this thing where they can't replicate these things. And my issue with a lot of scientific studies is that they're paid for by corporations. And so I just think, it would be silly to ignore the role of capitalism in that. And then I also just don't like anything like religion where, only the people with the money or the power have the access to the scientific facts. I don't agree with all that. But just separate from all of that, when you line up the double slit experiment next to the scientific method, there's some fucking questions there. If reality loads according to my biases, does that apply to a physical hypothesis? Are we living in a world of someone else's hypothesis because it happened in a lab?
Yeah.
And is that why we learn the opposite of things as time goes on?
Exactly. And I think that's the key to that is if you can propagate scientific materialism, you can have control and power because you can always go, I know the equation to that, and that's how this works. Where quantum physics and consciousness is, you can't prove it. Like if I observe it and I see that that's true for me, and you can't copy my internal experience, so like that's how reality works. But if scientism and the controller world adopts that, there's no power.
Right.
There's literally, you can't power over anybody else. Like everybody knows, everybody can choose. You can create your own reality.
And innovation just fucking goes through
the roof. I mean, it's like it's so many things. That's why I was like, oh my God, we're like on the brink. If like somebody else gets this and he's got the mind that like can create computers and knows ones and zeros, physics in and out, knows all the problems with physics, and then also knows the problems with quantum theory and has developed a foundational theory that gives answers to the questions of quantum physics, because most of the questions are coming from a classical physics world. He developed this new theory and then has answers to all the questions. Like collapse of the wave function is free will. That's because it's a free will thing. And so you can't explain it. It's whoever observes it gets to choose like what is observed. So you can't algorithmically mess with that. And all of those things, like it answers all the questions to me. And I mean, so far in my limited understanding of physics and quantum mechanics, listening to him like unpack some of them, I'm like, I have to listen to it 5 times to go, oh shit, I know it. I think I know what he's talking about. That's how it can change, and it might not be something that you get everybody in the science world to adopt to, but enough people do come together and start to change the reality, or just maybe it is literally, if you're an individual and you wake up and you start observing the reality being that way, you choose to control your field and say, I want to be on a reality that metaphysics become a thing, and we expand into this new evolution of creativity and stuff, then that's how you get there. And then the other things do just fall off. That is the split. Everybody loads themselves up into an AI and you go, ta-ta, go into the little box. I'm going this way. Yeah, it's a head trip, man, because it does come back to this attention, and you create your reality with like how you want to see it, is so real and so like fundamentally like it's a with his understanding, it's like it rationalizes it and explains it like not just a woo-woo concept anymore, which I never thought it was like not real, but I'm always looking for a way to like actionize the thing. And this to me is like starting to open up doors to that in a really cool way. And I'm now not very as uncomfortable with that one, the loneliness, the
yeah,
because I realize like I'm not alone when I'm on this exploration, and I can realize that like we are one, but I can play and go explore, and therefore like I'm never really alone. Like
right.
It's a weird paradox. But I think that's where all the truths are like paradoxical. That's a paradox that I even said that, but it's that blurry in between is where like reality really is.
Right.
So I'm not alone, but like at the core, we are all alone.
Alone, right. Fun stuff.
With that, we will end it.
So tomorrow is the 1 year anniversary of this podcast. Would that be a good day to do our first live stream?
Yeah.
Is that enough notice? It's already 5, so we got to edit this episode to get it out.
Yeah, I think why not? Let's just do it.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'll announce it tonight on the Patreon. So if you're already on the Patreon.
What time? We'll just figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So probably 7. So live stream Monday night, August 11th, the 1 year anniversary of Projecting the Flail. And that's on the $7 tier. So that is and we'll just unpack whatever feels interesting to unpack.
Cool.
We'll do that monthly on that tier. Mark has sessions.
I do. I need to open some more, but
Okay.
by the time this is out, I'll probably have more sessions. Yes.
Okay. And I guess that's it. If you're listening on audio, this is a video on YouTube. If there are talks of forcing people to do like face scans or ID scans to prevent kids from having adult TikTok or adult YouTube. If that turns out to be something more data harvesting that they're doing to everyone, we will move from YouTube to, I don't know, Vimeo videos hosted on Patreon for free or something. 'Cause fuck that. But thus far, they say it's just the AI that they're using, which is super accurate, is just going to be scanning to see if you're a kid. So if you're a kid listening to this, you should probably go watch some DIY videos on how to fix your roof or something. So, sprinkle those in between the skibbity toilet
so
or
you don't
whatever.
get limited.
Yeah. All right, love you, bye.
Oh, and if you're not watching this in video, if you're just doing audio, we're not wearing clothes, so you should come watch the video.
If Mark had it his way, we wouldn't. Mark is obsessed with nudity.
Just trying to pull people into the video, just I'm not upset. Well, okay. Bye.